When my younger sister Victoria stormed into my apartment demanding I give her my custom wedding dress because you'll never get married anyway, she had no idea I was about to hand her a receipt that would expose the truth about our family dynamics and change everything forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Richardson, and I am 31 years old. For the past 8 years, I have worked as a senior financial analyst at Morrison & Associates, a prestigious accounting firm in downtown Chicago. My career trajectory has been steady and rewarding, allowing me to build the kind of financial stability that seemed impossible during my childhood in the suburbs of Aurora, Illinois. Growing up in the Richardson household meant navigating complex family dynamics that revolved around my mother Margaret's unwavering favoritism toward my younger sister Victoria. The preferential treatment was not subtle or occasional. It permeated every aspect of our family interactions, creating an environment where Victoria learned to expect special consideration while I learned to rely on my own resources and determination. Victoria, now 27, has spent her adult years bouncing between part-time jobs, failed business ventures, and extended periods of unemployment, while living rent-free in our parents' basement. Her employment history reads like a catalog of abandoned opportunities: 6 months at a boutique clothing store, 3 months as a social media coordinator for a local restaurant, 8 months attempting to launch an online jewelry business that never generated meaningful revenue, and countless weeks of what she calls strategic career planning that primarily involves sleeping until noon and spending afternoons at coffee shops with friends who share similar approaches to professional responsibility. Despite this track record, our parents continue supporting Victoria financially while praising her creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. Meanwhile, my academic achievements, professional success, and financial independence receive minimal acknowledgement during family gatherings. The contrast in treatment has been consistent since childhood, but I have learned to focus on building my own life rather than seeking validation from family members who seem incapable of providing it equitably. My apartment in Lincoln Park represents everything I have worked to achieve. The 2-bedroom unit overlooks a tree-lined street and features the kind of architectural details that attracted me to Chicago after completing my master's degree in finance at Northwestern University. Every piece of furniture was carefully selected and purchased with my own earnings. The kitchen renovation I completed last year reflects both my aesthetic preferences and my commitment to creating a home environment that supports the lifestyle I have built for myself. The apartment also serves as my sanctuary from family drama and workplace stress. After long days analyzing corporate financial statements and preparing reports for senior partners, I return to an environment that reflects my values and priorities. The second bedroom functions as my home office, equipped with the technology and resources necessary for managing my investment portfolio and pursuing continuing education in financial planning and analysis. My relationship with money has been shaped by watching Victoria receive constant financial support while contributing minimal effort toward her own advancement. This observation motivated my commitment to financial literacy and independence. I began investing in mutual funds during college, contributed consistently to my retirement accounts from my first day of professional employment, and maintained an emergency fund that could support my lifestyle for 8 months without additional income. The wedding dress that would become central to our family conflict represents the intersection of my financial discipline and personal dreams. 18 months ago, I made the decision to purchase a custom designer gown, despite being single and without immediate marriage prospects. The decision reflected my belief that investing in quality items that align with personal values represents sound financial planning, regardless of immediate utility. The dress itself is extraordinary. Created by Isabella Marchetti, a designer whose work has been featured in Bridal Fashion Weekly and worn by celebrities at high-profile weddings, the gown incorporates hand-sewn beadwork, imported French lace, and architectural details that required 6 months of careful construction. The design process involved multiple consultations where we discussed my vision for elegance that would complement my figure while reflecting contemporary sophistication. The financial investment was substantial. The total cost reached $8,400, including design consultations, premium materials, skilled craftsmanship, and multiple fittings to ensure perfect customization. This amount represented significant expenditure, even within my comfortable income bracket, requiring careful budget planning and temporary reduction of discretionary spending in other categories. However, I viewed the purchase as an investment in my future rather than frivolous spending. The dress embodies my belief that I deserve beautiful things and meaningful experiences, regardless of whether my family recognizes my worth or supports my aspirations. The decision to commission the gown represented an act of faith in my own future happiness, and a tangible rejection of the limitations that others might impose on my expectations. The dress has been carefully preserved in my bedroom closet, protected by museum-quality garment preservation materials and climate-controlled storage conditions. Occasionally, I remove the protective covering to admire the craftsmanship and remind myself that investing in dreams and aspirations represents practical wisdom rather than wishful thinking. My approach to relationships has been influenced by family dynamics and professional demands in ways that have delayed traditional milestones like marriage and children. The men I have dated have generally been professionals who share my commitment to career advancement and financial responsibility. These relationships have been meaningful but have not progressed to engagement for various reasons, including geographic relocations, career prioritization, or simply the recognition that long-term compatibility requires more than shared values and mutual respect. Currently, I am not in a serious relationship, though I maintain optimism about finding a partner who shares my vision for building a life based on mutual support, financial responsibility, and shared values. My single status has become a source of commentary from family members who seem to interpret my career focus as evidence that I have abandoned traditional feminine aspirations. This perspective ignores the reality that my professional success has created the foundation for the kind of partnership and family life I envision for my future. The family dynamic that would lead to the wedding dress confrontation had been building tension for months before the actual incident. Victoria's latest entrepreneurial venture involved planning to start an event coordination business, despite lacking experience in project management, vendor relations, or client services. Her business plan consisted primarily of enthusiasm and assumptions about her natural creativity, without addressing practical considerations like insurance, licensing, financial management, or marketing strategy. During recent family dinners, Victoria had begun making comments about needing capital for her business launch and expecting family members to provide initial funding and resources. Her requests became increasingly specific and presumptuous, including suggestions that I could provide business mentorship, financial backing, or professional connections that would accelerate her success. My responses to these suggestions were diplomatically non-committal, focusing on the importance of developing comprehensive business plans and gaining relevant experience before launching ambitious ventures. I offered to review her business proposal if she prepared formal documentation, knowing that such preparation would either motivate serious planning or reveal the superficial nature of her current approach. Victoria's reaction to my conditional support was frustration and accusations that I was being unsupportive and jealous of her entrepreneurial vision. She complained to our parents that my success had made me arrogant and unwilling to help family members achieve their own goals. These conversations reinforced the existing family narrative that portrayed Victoria as the victim of circumstances, rather than the author of her own professional challenges. The mounting tension reached a critical point during our mother's birthday celebration 3 weeks before the wedding dress incident. Victoria had arrived late to the restaurant, explaining that she had been meeting with potential business partners about her event coordination concept. During dinner, she dominated conversation with elaborate descriptions of her business vision, while making pointed comments about my focus on corporate work that lacks creativity and personal fulfillment. The evening concluded with Victoria announcing that she had scheduled her first client consultation for the following month, describing an engagement party that she would coordinate for one of her friends. She presented this opportunity as evidence that her business was already gaining traction, despite having no formal training, business registration, or professional insurance coverage. After dinner, our parents praised Victoria's entrepreneurial initiative while expressing concern that I was becoming too focused on work and financial security at the expense of personal relationships and family connections. The conversation reinforced my growing awareness that family gatherings had become forums for subtle criticism of my life choices while celebrating Victoria's potential rather than her achievements. The wedding dress confrontation occurred on a Saturday morning in early October. I had planned to spend the day organizing my home office and preparing for a challenging week of quarterly financial analysis for several major clients. The morning was crisp and clear, with autumn sunlight filtering through my apartment windows in ways that made me appreciate the peaceful sanctuary I had created for myself. Victoria arrived unannounced at 9:30, using the spare key that our parents had given her without my knowledge or consent. I discovered her presence when I heard the front door opening while I was preparing coffee in the kitchen. The sound triggered immediate alarm until I recognized her voice calling my name from the entryway. Her unexpected arrival was unusual because Victoria rarely visited my apartment, preferring that family interactions occur at restaurants or our parents' house where she felt more comfortable and could rely on their support if conversations became challenging. Her presence in my personal space felt intrusive and suggested that whatever prompted her visit was significant enough to motivate unusual effort on her part. Victoria entered the kitchen carrying herself with the kind of determined confidence that I recognized from childhood situations where she had convinced herself that her desires justified imposing on others. Her expression combined expectation with defensive preparation for potential resistance to whatever request she was planning to make. "We need to talk," she announced without greeting or explanation for her unannounced visit. "I need a favor, and I know you're going to want to help me once you understand the situation." Her phrasing immediately indicated that she had already decided what she wanted and had developed justifications for why I should comply with her request. This approach was characteristic of Victoria's interactions throughout our adult relationship, where she presented her desires as mutual interests rather than personal preferences that might require negotiation or compromise. I invited her to sit at my kitchen table while I prepared coffee for both of us, hoping that hospitality might create a more collaborative atmosphere for whatever discussion she had in mind. Victoria's body language remained tense and purposeful, suggesting that she viewed this conversation as a mission to be accomplished rather than a family interaction to be enjoyed. "My friend Sarah is getting married in 3 weeks," Victoria began, "and she just hired me to coordinate her engagement party. This is exactly the opportunity I need to launch my event planning business properly." She explained that Sarah's engagement party would include approximately 60 guests, with a budget that would allow for elegant decoration, catered refreshments, and professional photography. Victoria presented this event as her chance to demonstrate her capabilities to potential clients while generating positive word-of-mouth marketing for her new business. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "The challenge," Victoria continued, "was that successful event coordination required attention to detail and sophisticated presentation that would impress guests and create the kind of memorable experience that generated referrals to friends and family members planning their own celebrations. "I need to look absolutely perfect at this party," Victoria said, her tone becoming more urgent. "Everyone there will be evaluating my professionalism and style. This is my chance to make the kind of impression that could establish my entire career." I acknowledged the importance of professional presentation, while privately questioning whether Victoria understood the complexity of event coordination beyond appearance management. However, I maintained supportive tone while waiting to understand what specific assistance she was requesting. Victoria's request, when she finally articulated it, was both shocking and entirely predictable, given her history of assuming that family resources should be available for her use, without meaningful consideration of boundaries or reciprocity. "I need to borrow your wedding dress for the party," she announced with the kind of casual confidence that suggested she had already convinced herself that my response would be positive. "It's absolutely perfect for the occasion, and everyone will be so impressed with how sophisticated and professional I look." The audacity of her request left me momentarily speechless. Victoria was asking to wear my custom designer wedding gown to an engagement party where she would be working as the event coordinator. The inappropriateness of the request extended beyond the obvious issues of wearing someone else's wedding dress to a different type of celebration. "Victoria," I said carefully, "that dress cost over $8,000 and was specifically designed for my future wedding. It's not appropriate for an engagement party, and it's certainly not something I would lend out for any occasion." Victoria's reaction was immediate and predictable. Her expression shifted from confident expectation to frustrated indignation, as if my refusal represented unreasonable selfishness rather than basic boundary maintenance. $8,000 for a dress you'll probably never even wear, she said with unconcealed contempt. You're 31 years old, Elena. You'll never get married anyway. At least if I wear it, the dress will actually be used for something meaningful instead of hanging in your closet collecting dust. The cruelty of her comment was breathtaking in its casual dismissal of my dreams and aspirations. Victoria had summarized years of family dynamics in a single sentence that revealed her fundamental lack of respect for my feelings, my investments, or my future possibilities. However, her comment also provided perfect opportunity for me to reveal information that would fundamentally alter the power dynamic of our relationship and expose the assumptions that had governed her treatment of me throughout our adult lives. I walked to my bedroom and retrieved the receipt that I had carefully preserved along with the dress documentation and care instructions. The receipt included itemized charges for design consultation, premium materials, skilled construction, and customization services that created the most beautiful garment I had ever owned. Returning to the kitchen, I placed the receipt on the table in front of Victoria and watched her expression change as she processed the implications of what she was seeing. "This is what that dress actually represents," I said calmly. "It represents my ability to invest in my own future happiness, regardless of what anyone else thinks about my prospects. It represents the financial discipline and professional success that makes such investments possible. And it represents my belief that I deserve beautiful things and meaningful experiences, even if my family doesn't recognize my worth." Victoria stared at the receipt with obvious shock, clearly processing not just the monetary amount but the evidence of planning, commitment, and self-investment that contradicted her assumptions about my priorities and capabilities. The conversation that followed would mark the beginning of a fundamental shift in our family dynamics, and my approach to managing relationships with people who consistently underestimate my strength, determination, and capacity for creating the life I envision for myself. Victoria's reaction to seeing the receipt was a masterpiece of conflicting emotions playing across her face in rapid succession. Initial shock gave way to disbelief, which transformed into defensive anger as the full implications of the document became clear. She picked up the receipt with trembling fingers, examining each line item as if searching for evidence that the numbers were fabricated or exaggerated. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Victoria said, her voice carrying the strained quality that always emerged when reality contradicted her preferred narrative. "Nobody spends this kind of money on a dress they might never wear. This is completely irresponsible financial behavior." Her attempt to reframe my investment as poor judgment rather than evidence of financial capability revealed the depth of her misconceptions about my professional success and personal priorities. Victoria had constructed an entire worldview based on the assumption that my single status reflected inadequacy rather than choice, and that my career focus indicated limitation rather than achievement. I allowed her to study the receipt thoroughly before responding, recognizing that this moment represented an opportunity to address years of accumulated assumptions and mischaracterizations. The conversation had evolved beyond the immediate issue of the wedding dress to encompass fundamental questions about respect, boundaries, and the right to make independent decisions about personal resources. "Victoria, this receipt represents exactly the kind of investment that responsible financial planning makes possible," I said, maintaining the calm tone that I had learned to employ during challenging client negotiations. "I have built my career specifically to create the freedom to purchase beautiful things that align with my values and aspirations. The dress is not an impulse purchase or wishful thinking. It is a tangible expression of my commitment to believing in my own future happiness." Victoria's response revealed the extent to which family dynamics had insulated her from realistic assessment of her own circumstances compared to mine. She had been so accustomed to receiving financial support and emotional validation without corresponding achievement that she had developed unrealistic expectations about resource allocation and personal responsibility. "But you could have invested this money or used it for something practical," Victoria continued, her tone becoming increasingly desperate as she searched for justification for her original request. "Instead, you spent it on something that might never serve any purpose beyond hanging in your closet." The irony of Victoria lecturing me about practical resource allocation was profound, given her history of receiving financial support for ventures that consistently failed to generate meaningful returns. Her concern about the dress potentially going unused ignored the reality that her own resource consumption had produced no tangible benefits for anyone involved. I decided that this conversation required complete honesty about the family dynamics that had shaped both of our adult development, regardless of how uncomfortable that honesty might prove for everyone involved. Years of diplomatic responses and carefully modulated feedback had not produced meaningful change in Victoria's expectations or behavior. "Victoria, I want you to consider the difference between our approaches to money and planning," I said, settling into my chair to indicate that this conversation would continue until we reached genuine understanding. "Over the past 5 years, you have received approximately $37,000 in direct financial support from our parents, plus free housing, utilities, food, and transportation that would cost at least $18,000 annually if you were living independently." I had calculated these figures during a recent review of my own family financial relationships, motivated by growing awareness that the resource distribution within our family reflected values and priorities that I no longer felt comfortable supporting without acknowledgement and reciprocity. During that same period, you have generated less than $15,000 in earned income from your various employment attempts and business ventures, I continued. Meanwhile, I have been financially independent since graduation, have never requested financial assistance from our parents, and have built sufficient resources to make investments like this dress without compromising my basic financial security. Victoria's expression had transformed from defensive anger to genuine shock as she processed the mathematical reality of our different financial trajectories. The specific numbers forced confrontation with patterns that she had previously been able to ignore or rationalize through appeals to creativity, entrepreneurial vision, or temporary setbacks. "I had no idea you were keeping track of my financial situation," Victoria said, her voice now carrying undertones of embarrassment rather than indignation. "That seems like an invasion of privacy and completely inappropriate sibling behavior." Her attempt to reframe my awareness of readily observable financial patterns as inappropriate monitoring demonstrated the psychological defense mechanisms that had allowed her to avoid accountability for her resource consumption and contribution patterns throughout our adult relationship. "Victoria, I am not monitoring your finances," I replied firmly. "I am observing family resource allocation patterns that directly affect relationships and expectations. When someone consistently receives financial support while criticizing others for their spending decisions, those patterns become relevant to family dynamics and individual boundaries." The conversation had reached the crucial point where Victoria would either engage with the substantive issues or retreat into familiar patterns of deflection and victimization. Her next response would determine whether this confrontation could produce genuine understanding or would simply add another layer to our existing relationship difficulties. Victoria set the receipt down on the table and looked directly at me for the first time since her arrival. The directness of her gaze suggested that she was finally prepared to engage seriously with the conversation, rather than continuing to search for angles that would support her original request. "I never thought about our financial situations in comparative terms," Victoria said slowly. "I suppose I assumed that your career success meant that spending money was less meaningful for you than it might be for other people. I did not realize that you viewed your purchases as investments, or that you had put serious thought into planning for major life events." Her acknowledgement represented genuine progress toward understanding, though it also revealed the extent to which she had avoided considering my perspective or experiences throughout our adult relationship. The assumption that financial success diminished the significance of spending decisions reflected fundamental misunderstanding about the relationship between money and personal values. "Victoria, the dress represents much more than a financial transaction," I explained. "It represents my belief that I deserve to prepare for happiness and celebration, regardless of whether those events are currently scheduled or guaranteed. It represents my commitment to investing in the person I am becoming, rather than limiting myself based on current circumstances or other people's expectations." The philosophical dimension of the dress purchase had been central to my decision-making process, though I had never articulated these thoughts to family members who seemed uninterested in my internal life or personal development. The confrontation was providing an unexpected opportunity to share perspectives that had remained private due to lack of receptive audience. "When I commissioned this dress, I was making a statement about my worth and my future," I continued. I was refusing to accept the narrative that single women should postpone investments in beauty, celebration, or meaningful experiences until external validation makes such investments socially acceptable. Victoria listened with apparent attention, her expression suggesting genuine effort to understand concepts that challenged her previous assumptions about my motivations and priorities. The conversation was evolving into exactly the type of meaningful dialogue that our family dynamics had traditionally prevented through patterns of favoritism, deflection, and superficial interaction. I think I have been approaching our relationship based on assumptions that were not fair to either of us, Victoria said after a prolonged silence. I assumed that your career success meant that you did not need support or understanding from family members, and I assumed that my struggles gave me priority claim on family resources and sympathy. Her acknowledgement was remarkably candid and represented the most mature perspective she had expressed during our adult relationship. The recognition that resource allocation should reflect contribution and effort rather than need alone suggested potential for developing more equitable family dynamics. However, the conversation also needed to address the immediate issue that had prompted Victoria's visit and the specific boundary violation that her request represented. Philosophical understanding would prove meaningless without practical changes in behavior and expectations. Victoria, I appreciate your willingness to consider these different perspectives, I said. However, we also need to address the specific issue of boundaries and respect for personal property. The dress is not available for borrowing, regardless of the occasion or circumstances involved. Her initial reaction was a brief return to defensive posturing, as if the boundary assertion triggered automatic resistance patterns. However, she quickly recognized that continued argument would undermine the progress we had achieved through honest dialogue. I understand that the dress request was inappropriate, Victoria admitted. I suppose I was thinking about it as a family resource rather than your personal property. I also realized that wearing someone else's wedding dress to a different type of event would send confusing messages to everyone involved. The practical inappropriateness of her request had been obvious from the beginning, but her acknowledgement suggested genuine recognition rather than grudging concession to superior argument. This distinction would prove important for determining whether our conversation would produce lasting change in her approach to family relationships. The discussion had addressed the immediate conflict, but it had also revealed opportunities for more substantial improvements in our relationship dynamic. Victoria's candid acknowledgement of her assumptions and misconceptions created possibilities for developing adult-sibling relationship based on mutual respect rather than historical family hierarchies. Victoria, I want to suggest that we use this conversation as the beginning of a different approach to our relationship, I said. I would like us to interact as adults who support each other's goals without assuming that support requires sacrificing personal boundaries or financial resources. The proposal represented significant departure from family patterns that had characterized our interactions since childhood. Successfully implementing such changes would require sustained effort from both participants and probably resistance from parents who had become invested in maintaining existing dynamics. Victoria's response was cautiously positive, though tinged with realistic awareness of the challenges involved in modifying established relationship patterns. I would like that too, she said, but I am not sure how to navigate the practical aspects of changing family dynamics that have been in place for so many years. Her concern was valid and reflected mature understanding of the systemic nature of family relationship patterns. Individual changes in behavior and expectations would inevitably create ripple effects that affected other family members who might not welcome modification of arrangements that had previously served their interests. The conversation concluded with agreement to continue developing our adult-sibling relationship through regular communication that focused on mutual support rather than resource requests or comparative evaluation. Victoria expressed genuine curiosity about my work and personal interests, while I committed to providing encouragement for her professional development efforts that demonstrated realistic planning and sustained effort. As Victoria prepared to leave, she returned to the wedding dress topic with an apology that felt authentically remorseful rather than strategically motivated. Elena, I am genuinely sorry for suggesting that you would never get married, she said. That comment was cruel and completely unfair. Your relationship status has nothing to do with your worth or your prospects for future happiness. Her apology addressed the most hurtful aspect of our confrontation, while acknowledging the underlying assumptions that had motivated her original request. The recognition that my single status did not indicate personal failure or justify diminished expectations represented substantial progress in her understanding of different life paths and priorities. The conversation had transformed a boundary violation into an opportunity for genuine relationship development, though the ultimate success of this transformation would depend on sustained implementation of the principles we had discussed. Victoria's willingness to acknowledge her misconceptions and commit to different interaction patterns provided reason for cautious optimism about future family dynamics. As she left my apartment, Victoria paused at the door to make one final comment that revealed the depth of her changed perspective. "I hope that when you do wear that dress, it will be exactly the celebration you envisioned when you commissioned it," she said. "You deserve all the happiness and beauty that investment represents." Her words reflected genuine understanding of the symbolic significance that the dress held for me, as well as sincere hope for my future fulfillment and celebration. The transformation from demanding access to my property to blessing my aspirations represented exactly the type of growth that meaningful confrontation could produce when handled with honesty and mutual respect. The incident had concluded with preserved boundaries, improved understanding, and expanded possibilities for authentic adult relationship between sisters who had previously interacted primarily through childhood patterns and parental mediation. The receipt had served its purpose as tangible evidence of my financial capability and personal investment in future happiness, while the broader conversation had established foundation for ongoing relationship development based on mutual respect and realistic assessment of each other's circumstances and contributions. The week following my confrontation with Victoria brought unexpected complications that tested my commitment to the boundary-setting principles we had discussed. While our conversation had concluded on a positive note with mutual understanding and renewed respect, the practical implementation of changed family dynamics proved more challenging than either of us had anticipated. The first indication that our private resolution would face external resistance came during a phone call from my mother on Tuesday evening. Margaret Richardson's voice carried the particular tone of controlled frustration that she employed when family situations deviated from her preferred management approach. "Elena, Victoria told me about your conversation regarding the wedding dress." My mother began without preliminary pleasantries. "I am concerned that you may have been unnecessarily harsh with your sister during a vulnerable time in her professional development." The characterization of Victoria's demand for my $8,000 custom gown as a vulnerable moment requiring accommodation rather than boundaries demonstrated the family dynamics that had enabled problematic behavior patterns throughout our adult relationship. My mother's immediate focus on protecting Victoria from consequences rather than addressing the appropriateness of her request confirmed that systemic change would require sustained effort against established resistance. "Mother, Victoria made an unreasonable request for expensive personal property while making cruel comments about my marriage prospects," I replied, maintaining the professional tone that served me well during difficult client conversations. The boundary I established was appropriate and necessary for maintaining a respectful adult relationship. My mother's response revealed the extent to which family resource allocation had been governed by need-based rather than contribution-based principles, creating expectations that financial success should translate into increased responsibility for supporting other family members regardless of their effort or reciprocity. "Victoria is struggling to establish her career and needs support from family members who have been fortunate enough to achieve financial stability," my mother continued. "Your refusal to help her make a good impression at this important networking event seems selfish given your comfortable circumstances." The reframing of my boundary maintenance as selfishness while ignoring Victoria's presumptuous demand and hurtful comments demonstrated the cognitive distortions that had perpetuated dysfunctional family dynamics. My mother's perspective treated my financial success as a family resource rather than personal achievement that afforded me increased autonomy and choice. I recognized that this conversation represented a crucial test of my commitment to the principles that Victoria and I had agreed upon during our kitchen table discussion. Retreating to familiar patterns of diplomatic compromise would undermine the progress we had achieved, while reinforcing the expectation that my boundaries remained subject to family override when convenient. Mother, I need to clarify several important points about this situation, I said, settling into my home office chair where I conducted challenging professional discussions. First, Victoria did not ask for general support or encouragement. She demanded access to an expensive custom garment that represents significant personal and financial investment. Second, her request was accompanied by cruel comments designed to justify her entitlement through attacking my personal worth and future prospects. The conversation required me to articulate perspectives about family boundaries and individual autonomy that I had previously kept private to avoid conflict. However, the confrontation with Victoria had revealed that avoiding difficult discussions simply allowed problematic assumptions and expectations to persist without challenge or modification. Third, I continued, Victoria's professional development challenges stem from lack of sustained effort and realistic planning rather than insufficient family support. She has received substantial financial assistance over the years without corresponding accountability or reciprocal contribution to family relationships. My mother's silence suggested that she was processing information that challenged her preferred narrative about family dynamics and individual responsibilities. The specific documentation of financial support and resource allocation forced confrontation with patterns that had been maintained through selective attention and emotional rather than factual assessment. Elena, I never realized you were keeping such detailed records of family financial relationships, my mother said finally, her tone shifting from defensive advocacy to uncertain evaluation. That level of analysis seems inappropriate for family interactions and suggests a calculating approach to relationships that concerns me. Her attempt to recharacterize my awareness of observable financial patterns as inappropriate calculation demonstrated resistance to accountability that had enabled problematic resource allocation throughout our adult family relationships. The suggestion that acknowledging financial realities represented cold calculation rather than responsible stewardship revealed deep-seated assumptions about money and family obligations. Mother, I am not calculating or manipulative, I replied firmly. I am observing patterns that directly affect family relationships and individual development. When family resources consistently flow toward the person who contributes least while the person who contributes most receives criticism for maintaining boundaries, those patterns warrant examination and discussion. The conversation had reached the point where continued diplomatic language would obscure, rather than clarify, the fundamental issues at stake. My mother needed to understand that the wedding dress incident represented a symptom of broader family dynamics, rather than an isolated conflict that could be resolved through compromise and accommodation. I believe our family would benefit from more honest communication about expectations, boundaries, and reciprocity. I continued. The current pattern of supporting Victoria's choices without accountability while expecting me to sacrifice personal boundaries for family harmony is unsustainable and unfair. My mother's response required several minutes of consideration, suggesting that she was genuinely processing challenging perspectives rather than simply searching for counterarguments. The extended silence indicated that the conversation had penetrated defensive mechanisms and reached substantive evaluation of family relationship patterns. Perhaps I have not adequately considered how different our approaches to supporting Victoria have been, she admitted reluctantly. I suppose I assumed that your financial success meant you could easily accommodate family requests without significant personal cost. The acknowledgement represented meaningful progress toward understanding, though it also revealed the extent to which my professional achievements had been interpreted as evidence that normal boundaries and considerations no longer applied to my family relationships. Success had paradoxically reduced rather than increased family recognition of my autonomy and personal needs. Mother, financial success does not eliminate the importance of respect, reciprocity, and appropriate boundaries in family relationships, I explained. In fact, success makes those principles more important, because it creates temptation for others to view my resources as family property rather than personal achievement. The philosophical dimension of this discussion extended beyond the immediate family conflict to encompass broader questions about individual autonomy, family obligations, and the relationship between success and social expectations. These concepts had shaped my approach to career development and personal relationships, but had never been explicitly addressed within family conversations. I want to suggest that we establish clearer communication about family expectations and individual boundaries, I proposed. This would benefit everyone by reducing misunderstandings and creating more equitable relationship dynamics. My mother's agreement to consider changes in family communication patterns was cautious but genuine, representing recognition that current approaches had produced unnecessary conflict and resentment. The willingness to examine established patterns suggested potential for meaningful improvement in family relationships. However, the conversation also revealed that implementing such changes would require sustained effort against psychological and social inertia that had governed family interactions for decades. Individual growth and boundary establishment would inevitably create tension with family members who had become comfortable with existing arrangements. The challenge of managing family expectations while maintaining professional responsibilities became apparent during the following days, as I received additional phone calls and text messages from relatives who had heard various versions of the wedding dress incident. Each conversation required me to explain my perspective while resisting pressure to compromise boundaries for the sake of family harmony. Victoria's great-aunt Patricia called on Thursday evening to express concern about family unity and suggest that I reconsider my position regarding the dress loan. Her perspective reflected generational assumptions about family resource sharing and individual sacrifice for collective harmony that had shaped family dynamics throughout my childhood. Dear, family relationships are more important than material possessions, Aunt Patricia said, with the authoritative tone that elderly relatives employ when dispensing wisdom to younger family members. Surely you can find a way to help your sister during this important career opportunity. The characterization of the wedding dress as mere material possession rather than significant personal investment demonstrated misunderstanding of both the financial and emotional dimensions involved in the request. The suggestion that family harmony required individual sacrifice without reciprocity reflected values that had contributed to dysfunctional relationship patterns. Aunt Patricia, I appreciate your concern about family relationships. I replied respectfully. However, healthy family relationships require mutual respect and appropriate boundaries rather than one-sided accommodation and resource sharing. The conversation with Aunt Patricia revealed that changing individual behavior within family systems would inevitably encounter resistance from multiple sources who had developed comfort and investment in existing dynamics. Extended family members who had not directly experienced the problematic patterns remained committed to superficial harmony rather than substantive relationship health. My cousin Jennifer's perspective, shared during a Saturday afternoon phone call, provided additional insight into how the wedding dress incident was being interpreted within broader family networks. Jennifer had always maintained cordial relationships with both Victoria and me, while avoiding direct involvement in family conflicts. Elena, I understand your frustration with Victoria's request, Jennifer said diplomatically, but I wonder if there might be a compromise that could help Victoria with her career launch while respecting your feelings about the dress. The suggestion that compromise remained possible demonstrated persistent misunderstanding of the boundary violation involved in Victoria's original request. The focus on finding middle ground rather than addressing the appropriateness of the demand itself reflected family culture that prioritized conflict avoidance over principle enforcement. Jennifer, this situation is not about finding compromise, I explained patiently. Victoria demanded access to expensive personal property while making cruel comments about my marriage prospects. The appropriate response is acknowledgement that such behavior is unacceptable rather than negotiation about accommodation levels. The process of repeatedly explaining my position to various family members proved exhausting and time-consuming, while reinforcing my appreciation for the clear boundaries that professional relationships provided. Corporate environments operated according to explicit standards and expectations that reduced ambiguity and emotional manipulation in interpersonal interactions. However, the family conversations also provided opportunities to articulate values and principles that had remained implicit throughout my adult development. The necessity of defending boundary decisions forced clarification of personal philosophy regarding respect, reciprocity, and individual autonomy within family systems. Victoria's response to family pressure on my behalf proved particularly revealing about her commitment to the relationship changes we had discussed during our kitchen table conversation. Rather than allowing relatives to advocate for her position, she actively communicated that she had recognized the inappropriateness of her request and supported my boundary decisions. During a family gathering at our parents' house the following Sunday, Victoria publicly acknowledged that her wedding dress request had been unreasonable while expressing appreciation for my willingness to engage in honest conversation about family dynamics and individual expectations. Her mature handling of social pressure demonstrated genuine growth rather than strategic positioning. I learned important things about boundaries and respect during my conversation with Elena. Victoria announced during dinner when Aunt Patricia raised the dress issue. I realized that I have been making assumptions about family resources and individual obligations that were unfair to everyone involved. Victoria's public acknowledgement of her misconceptions while supporting my boundary decisions represented exactly the type of adult behavior that could transform family relationship dynamics. Her willingness to accept social discomfort, rather than allowing me to face continued pressure, demonstrated genuine commitment to changed relationship patterns. The family dinner conversation revealed interesting divisions among relatives regarding individual autonomy versus collective harmony. Older family members generally favored accommodation and compromise approaches, while younger relatives expressed understanding of boundary maintenance and individual choice principles. My success in managing family pressure while maintaining professional responsibilities required developing new skills in diplomatic communication and strategic relationship management. The experience provided valuable lessons about influence and persuasion that complemented my financial analysis expertise while expanding my capability for handling complex interpersonal dynamics. The incident had evolved from a simple boundary violation into a comprehensive examination of family values, individual autonomy, and relationship equity that would continue influencing my approach to personal and professional interactions. The learning curve involved not only defending immediate decisions, but also articulating philosophical principles that could guide future relationship development. The month following the family dinner, where Victoria publicly acknowledged her inappropriate behavior, brought unexpected developments that demonstrated how personal boundary setting could create positive opportunities in professional and social contexts. My newfound confidence in articulating principles and managing difficult conversations began generating recognition from colleagues and superiors who observed my enhanced leadership capabilities during challenging client interactions. The transformation became apparent during a particularly complex merger analysis for Morrison & Associates, largest corporate client. Hartwell Industries required comprehensive financial assessment for acquiring a mid-sized manufacturing company whose financial statements contained numerous irregularities and questionable accounting practices. The project demanded not only technical expertise but also diplomatic communication with executives who had personal investments in presenting their company favorably despite documented financial concerns. During the initial client meeting, Hartwell's chief financial officer attempted to minimize the significance of accounting discrepancies that my preliminary analysis had identified as potentially indicating systematic financial mismanagement. His approach involved a combination of technical jargon, deflection tactics, and subtle intimidation designed to discourage thorough investigation of problematic areas. Previously, I might have employed diplomatic language that acknowledged his concerns, while quietly pursuing complete analysis through indirect channels. However, my recent experience with family boundary enforcement had strengthened my confidence in direct communication when professional integrity required clear position statements. Mr. Davidson, I understand your desire to expedite this analysis. I addressed the chief financial officer with calm authority. However, the accounting irregularities we have identified require comprehensive examination before we can provide accurate assessment of acquisition risks. Our professional responsibility to Hartwell Industries demands thoroughness, rather than expedited conclusions that might overlook significant financial liabilities. The directness of my response surprised both Mr. Davidson and my supervising partner, James Morrison, who had typically handled client pushback during sensitive financial investigations. My willingness to address resistance confidently while maintaining professional courtesy demonstrated leadership capabilities that had not been apparent in previous project interactions. Mr. Davidson's initial reaction was defensive posturing, similar to the resistance patterns I had encountered during family conversations about boundaries and accountability. However, my professional environment provided structural support for principle-based decision-making that family systems often lacked through emotional manipulation and guilt-based persuasion techniques. Ms. Richardson, we appreciate your thoroughness, Mr. Davidson replied after recognizing that intimidation tactics would not succeed. Perhaps you could explain specifically which areas require additional investigation so we can provide appropriate documentation and support for your analysis. The conversation continued with productive collaboration rather than adversarial positioning, demonstrating that confident boundary maintenance often earned respect rather than creating permanent conflict. My ability to remain firm on professional principles while offering constructive solutions established credibility that enhanced rather than damaged client relationships. James Morrison approached me privately after the client meeting to discuss my handling of the resistance we'd encountered. His feedback revealed that senior partners had been observing my professional development and considering expanded responsibilities within the firm's most challenging client relationships. Elena, your approach to that conversation demonstrated exactly the type of leadership presence that we need for our most complex client engagements, James said during our debriefing session. You maintained professional integrity while providing clear direction for moving forward productively. That combination of firmness and collaboration is rare and valuable in financial consulting. Quote, his recognition of capabilities that had emerged through personal boundary-setting experiences confirmed that individual growth often produced benefits that extended far beyond the original circumstances that prompted development efforts. The confidence I had gained through family confrontations was translating into enhanced professional effectiveness and career advancement opportunities. The Hartwell Industries project continued over several weeks, requiring multiple meetings with executives who attempted various strategies for limiting the scope and depth of our financial investigation. Each interaction provided opportunities to practice the direct communication and principled decision-making that had emerged from my wedding dress confrontation with Victoria. During one particularly challenging session, the company's president suggested that our analysis should focus on positive financial indicators, while treating problematic areas as minor concerns that would not significantly impact acquisition decisions. His proposal essentially requested that we compromise our professional standards to support his preferred business outcomes. Mr. Hartwell, our analysis must provide accurate assessment of all material financial factors that could affect acquisition success. I responded with the same calm authority that had proved effective in previous conversations. Selective emphasis on positive indicators while minimizing significant concerns would not serve your long-term interests or meet our professional obligations. The president's reaction revealed that he had expected diplomatic accommodation rather than direct challenge to his suggested approach. However, my confident articulation of professional principles established credibility that ultimately strengthened rather than damaged our consulting relationship. I suppose we need to address these concerns comprehensively if we want reliable guidance for our acquisition decision. Mr. Hartwell acknowledged after recognizing that our firm would not compromise analytical integrity for client convenience. What specific information do you need to complete your assessment? The successful resolution of client resistance through confident boundary maintenance reinforced my growing understanding that respectful directness often produced better outcomes than diplomatic avoidance. Professional relationships, like family relationships, benefited from clear communication about expectations and non-negotiable principles. My enhanced confidence in managing difficult conversations began attracting attention from other departments within Morrison & Associates, who faced similar challenges with clients who attempted to influence analytical conclusions through pressure tactics. The Human Resources Director, Sarah Chen, invited me to participate in training sessions for junior associates who struggled with maintaining professional boundaries during client interactions. Elena, your approach to client relationship management demonstrates excellent balance between collaboration and professional integrity. Sarah explained during our planning meeting. We would like you to share your strategies with associates who need guidance in handling resistance and pressure from clients who prefer accommodation over accuracy. The opportunity to mentor junior colleagues represented significant professional recognition, while providing chance to articulate the boundary-setting principles that had emerged from personal experience. The training sessions required me to develop systematic approaches for teaching confidence and direct communication to professionals who lacked experience in managing difficult interpersonal dynamics. The first training session included 8 junior associates who had requested guidance in handling challenging client relationships. Their questions revealed common patterns of uncertainty about when accommodation served client interests versus when professional integrity required firm position maintenance. The key principle is distinguishing between client service and client accommodation, I explained during our opening discussion. Service means providing accurate analysis and honest guidance that supports their long-term success. Accommodation means modifying our conclusions to match their preferences regardless of analytical accuracy. The distinction resonated with associates who had struggled to balance client satisfaction with professional responsibility. Their questions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of technical analysis combined with uncertainty about interpersonal dynamics that required confident communication during disagreement or resistance. One associate, Michael Torres, shared his experience with a client who had requested modifications to cash flow projections that would support loan approval despite underlying financial concerns. His discomfort with the request reflected appropriate professional instincts, combined with uncertainty about effective resistance strategies. Michael, your instinct to resist that modification demonstrates sound professional judgment. I responded during our group discussion. The challenge is communicating your position in ways that educate the client about long-term risks while maintaining collaborative relationship dynamics. The conversation provided opportunity to share specific language and strategic approaches that had proved effective during my recent client interactions. The associates responded enthusiastically to concrete guidance that combined technical expertise with practical communication strategies. Victoria contacted me during this period to share developments in her event planning business that reflected the maturity and realistic planning that had emerged from our boundary-setting conversation. Her approach to professional development had evolved from unrealistic expectations and resource demands to systematic skill building and client relationship management. Elena, I wanted to update you on the engagement party project and thank you for the conversation that helped me approach it more professionally, Victoria said during our phone call. I realized that successful event coordination requires much more preparation and attention to detail than I had originally understood. Her acknowledgement of increased complexity and responsibility requirements represented exactly the type of growth that honest family communication could produce when individuals remained open to challenging feedback and personal development opportunities. Sarah's engagement party was successful, and I received positive feedback from several guests who asked about my availability for future events. Victoria continued. However, I also recognized that I need formal training and business development support before I can establish a sustainable client base. The recognition that professional success required systematic preparation rather than natural talent alone demonstrated mature perspective that had been absent from her previous entrepreneurial attempts. The willingness to invest in education and skill development before expecting significant income represented a fundamental shift in her approach to career development. I have enrolled in a certificate program for event management at the community college, and I am working part-time with an established event planning company to gain practical experience, Victoria explained. The combination of formal education and mentored practice should provide the foundation I need for building my own business responsibly. Her strategic approach to professional development reflected the type of realistic planning and sustained effort that created sustainable career advancement. The decision to gain experience through employment before launching independent business operations demonstrated exactly the type of practical wisdom that family conversations had encouraged. The conversation with Victoria confirmed that boundary setting and honest communication could produce positive changes in family relationships while supporting individual growth and development for all parties involved. Her professional maturation validated my decision to maintain clear expectations rather than enabling continued irresponsible behavior through accommodation and resource provision. My confidence in handling challenging interpersonal dynamics continued expanding through successful management of complex client relationships and positive feedback from training program participants. The combination of technical expertise and communication capabilities was creating career advancement opportunities that had not been available when I focused exclusively on analytical competence. James Morrison approached me with a proposal for leading a new client services initiative that would focus on developing long-term consulting relationships with companies requiring ongoing financial analysis and strategic planning support. The role would combine my technical expertise with the relationship management capabilities that had become apparent through recent project successes. Elena, we believe you have the unique combination of analytical skills and interpersonal effectiveness that this initiative requires, James explained during our discussion about the expanded role. Your ability to maintain professional standards while building collaborative client relationships makes you the ideal candidate for developing this new service offering. The opportunity represented significant career advancement that reflected recognition of capabilities that had emerged through personal boundary-setting experiences. The role would provide increased autonomy, expanded responsibility, and compensation advancement that aligned with my long-term professional development objectives. The wedding dress incident had initiated changes that extended far beyond family relationship improvements to encompass enhanced professional effectiveness and career advancement opportunities. The confidence gained through successful boundary maintenance was translating into leadership recognition that created pathways for continued growth and development within my chosen field. 3 months into my expanded role as Director of Strategic Client Relations at Morrison & Associates, I achieved a breakthrough that would establish my reputation within the Chicago financial consulting community while demonstrating the power of principled leadership in creating sustainable business relationships. The success emerged from applying the boundary setting and direct communication principles that had transformed my family dynamics to a complex corporate restructuring project that required both technical expertise and sophisticated stakeholder management. Meridian Technologies, a mid-sized software development company, approached our firm seeking guidance for a comprehensive organizational restructuring that would position them for acquisition by a Fortune 500 technology corporation. The company faced significant internal challenges, including conflicting departmental priorities, unclear financial reporting practices, and executive team disagreements about strategic direction that had prevented them from presenting a coherent value proposition to potential acquirers. The complexity of Meridian's situation extended beyond traditional financial analysis to encompass organizational psychology, change management, and strategic communication challenges that required integration of multiple consulting disciplines. Previous consulting engagements had failed to produce meaningful improvements because individual departments had resisted recommendations that required coordination with other organizational units. My initial assessment revealed that Meridian's challenges reflected systemic communication patterns similar to those that had characterized my family dynamics before the wedding dress confrontation. Different departments operated according to conflicting assumptions about priorities and resource allocation, while avoiding direct discussion of fundamental disagreements that prevented collaborative problem-solving. The engineering department prioritized technical innovation and product development without adequate consideration of market demand or profitability requirements. The sales team focused on customer acquisition and revenue generation, without understanding the operational constraints that affected product delivery timelines. The finance department emphasized cost control and risk management without communicating effectively with operational units about resource needs and strategic investments. Each department possessed legitimate expertise and valuable perspectives, but the absence of systematic communication and coordination mechanisms had created organizational dysfunction that prevented effective decision-making and strategic implementation. The situation required intervention approaches that addressed both technical issues and interpersonal dynamics that maintained counterproductive separation between organizational units. My strategy involved conducting comprehensive interviews with key personnel from each department to understand their individual perspectives and concerns before developing integration recommendations that acknowledged legitimate interests while establishing collaborative frameworks for ongoing coordination. The approach reflected lessons learned from family boundary setting experiences about the importance of understanding different viewpoints before attempting to modify relationship dynamics. The interview process revealed that departmental conflicts reflected deeper organizational culture issues rather than simple technical disagreements. Each department had developed defensive communication patterns that prioritized protecting their individual interests over advancing collective organizational objectives. The competitive rather than collaborative internal environment had prevented the type of strategic alignment that acquisition prospects required. During my interview with Rebecca Martinez, the Vice President of Engineering, she expressed frustration with sales commitments that exceeded technical capabilities while ignoring development timeline realities. Her perspective reflected legitimate concerns about operational constraints, combined with insufficient understanding of market pressures that influence sales strategy decisions. The sales team consistently promises delivery schedules that require our department to work excessive overtime, while compromising quality standards, Rebecca explained during our discussion. We need realistic timelines that allow for proper testing and refinement, rather than constant crisis management that affects employee morale and product reliability. Her concerns were technically sound and professionally legitimate, representing exactly the type of operational expertise that successful organizations required. However, her communication with other departments had become adversarial rather than educational, creating defensive responses that prevented collaborative problem-solving. My interview with David Chen, the director of sales, revealed complementary frustrations with engineering timelines that failed to accommodate competitive market realities and customer expectations. His perspective reflected legitimate understanding of external pressures, combined with insufficient appreciation for technical complexity that affected development processes. Our competitors are delivering similar functionality in half the time that our engineering team requires, quote David shared during our conversation. We are losing potential clients because our development cycles cannot match market demands for rapid deployment and feature updates. His market awareness was accurate and strategically important, representing external perspective that successful organizations needed to incorporate into operational planning. However, his approach to influencing engineering priorities had become demanding rather than collaborative, creating resistance that prevented effective coordination between departments. The interview process confirmed that Meridian's organizational challenges reflected communication and coordination problems, rather than fundamental conflicts of interest between departments. Each unit possessed expertise that contributed to organizational success, but the absence of systematic integration mechanisms had created competitive internal dynamics that prevented collaborative strategic implementation. My recommendations focused on establishing regular cross-departmental communication protocols that would allow different units to understand each other's constraints and priorities while developing realistic project timelines that balanced market demands with operational capabilities. The approach required cultural changes that emphasized collective success over departmental protection. The implementation process proved more challenging than the strategic design phase, because it required individual behavioral changes from executives who had become comfortable with competitive internal dynamics. Each department needed to modify communication patterns that had developed over several years while learning to prioritize organizational objectives over departmental preferences. My role evolved from traditional consulting advisor to change management facilitator, who needed to support individual executives through the psychological and practical challenges of adopting collaborative rather than competitive approaches to interdepartmental relationships. The experience required applying the same principles of patient persistence and clear communication that had proved effective during family boundary-setting conversations. The breakthrough moment occurred during a comprehensive strategic planning session that brought together executives from all departments to develop coordinated approaches for addressing acquisition readiness requirements. The meeting represented the first time in over 2 years that senior leadership had attempted systematic collaborative planning rather than parallel individual department planning. Rebecca Martinez and David Chen initially approached the session with the defensive posturing that had characterized their previous interactions. However, the structured communication framework that I had established required each participant to articulate their concerns and constraints clearly, while acknowledging the legitimate interests and expertise of other departments. I need to understand the specific market pressures that drive our sales timeline commitments so that engineering can develop realistic approaches for meeting those requirements, Rebecca stated during our problem-solving discussion. I also need sales to understand the technical complexity factors that affect our development schedules so we can establish achievable expectations. Her willingness to seek understanding rather than simply defending engineering priorities represented exactly the type of perspective shift that successful organizational change required. The request for mutual education rather than unilateral accommodation demonstrated mature professional leadership that could support collaborative strategic planning. David Chen responded with reciprocal openness that acknowledged engineering constraints while sharing market intelligence that could inform development priority decisions. I can provide detailed competitive analysis and customer feedback data that might help engineering prioritize features that offer the greatest market advantage, David offered. I also need to understand technical development processes better so I can set more realistic client expectations. The conversation marked a fundamental transformation in interdepartmental communication patterns from competitive positioning to collaborative problem-solving. Both executives had recognized that their individual department success required understanding and coordination with other organizational units, rather than independent optimization of departmental priorities. The strategic planning session continued with increasingly productive collaboration as different departments shared expertise and developed integrated approaches for addressing acquisition readiness requirements. The cultural transformation from competitive to collaborative internal dynamics created immediate improvements in decision-making effectiveness and strategic implementation capability. Within 6 weeks of implementing the new communication and coordination protocols, Meridian Technologies had resolved the organizational dysfunction that had prevented effective strategic planning and operational coordination. The improvements attracted attention from Sterling Corporation, the Fortune 500 technology company that ultimately acquired Meridian for significantly more than the initial valuation estimates had projected. Sterling's acquisition team specifically cited Meridian's improved organizational coordination and strategic alignment as key factors that justified their premium acquisition offer. The cultural transformation that had emerged from systematic communication improvements had created measurable value that translated into substantial financial returns for Meridian's stakeholders. James Morrison approached me immediately after the Meridian acquisition announcement to discuss the broader implications of the project's success for Morrison & Associates' strategic consulting capabilities. The integration of organizational psychology and change management with traditional financial analysis had produced results that exceeded client expectations while demonstrating new service offerings that could differentiate our firm within the competitive consulting marketplace. Elena, your approach to the Meridian engagement has created a new model for comprehensive organizational consulting that addresses both technical and cultural factors affecting business performance, James explained during our debriefing session. The success has generated interest from other clients who recognize that organizational dysfunction often prevents effective implementation of technically sound strategic recommendations. The recognition confirmed that my personal growth through boundary-setting experiences had created professional capabilities that offered unique value within the financial consulting industry. The integration of interpersonal effectiveness with technical expertise represented exactly the type of leadership development that created sustainable competitive advantages for both individual professionals and consulting organizations. The Meridian success generated immediate opportunities for expanding my role within Morrison & Associates, while attracting attention from industry publications that featured the project as an example of innovative approaches to corporate restructuring and acquisition preparation. Financial Consulting Today published a comprehensive case study that highlighted the integration of organizational psychology with traditional financial analysis as an emerging trend in comprehensive business advisory services. The professional recognition extended beyond immediate career advancement to encompass speaking opportunities at industry conferences and invitations to participate in thought leadership initiatives that would establish my reputation as an expert in integrated organizational consulting. The success had created platform for influencing broader industry practices while advancing my individual career development objectives. Victoria contacted me to congratulate me on the professional recognition and share her own progress in building sustainable event planning business through the systematic approach we had discussed during our boundary-setting conversation. Her development reflected parallel commitment to principled professional practices and realistic strategic planning that had emerged from our improved family relationship dynamics. Elena, I wanted to tell you that the approach we discussed about boundaries and professional integrity has been incredibly valuable for my business development, Victoria shared during our phone conversation. I have learned to establish clear expectations with clients while maintaining collaborative relationships that support successful event outcomes. Her application of boundary-setting principles to professional contexts demonstrated that the family conversation benefits had extended beyond improved sibling relationships to encompass enhanced business practices and client relationship management. The personal growth that had emerged from honest communication was creating professional advantages for both of us through different career paths. I recently completed a wedding coordination project that required managing multiple vendors and complex family dynamics, Victoria continued. My ability to maintain clear communication and professional boundaries while accommodating different preferences and requirements made the difference between successful celebration and potential disaster. The wedding coordination success represented meaningful professional achievement that reflected sustained effort and strategic skill development, rather than unrealistic expectations about natural talent and family resource provision. Victoria's commitment to systematic professional education and mentored practical experience had created the foundation for sustainable business growth. The conversation confirmed that boundary setting and honest communication principles could transform multiple aspects of individual and family development. while creating opportunities that had not been apparent when relationships operated according to accommodation and avoidance patterns. Both Victoria and I had achieved professional advancement through applying lessons learned during our wedding dress confrontation to broader life circumstances and career development challenges. The success at Meridian Technologies had established my reputation within the Chicago business community, while providing foundation for continued career advancement and expanded influence within the financial consulting industry. The integration of interpersonal effectiveness with technical expertise represented sustainable competitive advantage that could support long-term professional development and meaningful contribution to organizational success across multiple client relationships. The Meridian Technologies acquisition success created a cascade of professional opportunities that demonstrated how principled leadership and innovative problem-solving approaches could generate recognition far beyond immediate client relationships. Within 2 months of the Sterling Corporation acquisition announcement, I received invitations to speak at 3 major industry conferences, consulted with 5 Fortune 500 companies seeking similar organizational integration services, and attracted the attention of executive search firms representing organizations that required leadership combining technical expertise with advanced interpersonal effectiveness. The most significant opportunity emerged through an unexpected connection with Dr. Amanda Foster, the Chief Executive Officer of Strategic Solutions Institute, a premier business consulting firm that specialized in complex organizational transformation projects for multinational corporations. Dr. Foster had read the Financial Consulting Today case study featuring the Meridian engagement and reached out directly to discuss potential collaboration on projects that required the type of integrated approach I had developed. During our initial phone conversation, Dr. Foster explained that Strategic Solutions Institute faced increasing demand from clients who needed comprehensive organizational change management that addressed both technical business requirements and cultural transformation challenges. Traditional consulting approaches that focused exclusively on process optimization or financial restructuring had proven insufficient for organizations requiring fundamental shifts in communication patterns and collaborative effectiveness. Elena, your work at Meridian demonstrates exactly the type of systems thinking and implementation capability that our clients are requesting drive. Foster explained during our discussion. We need consultants who can integrate analytical rigor with sophisticated understanding of human dynamics and organizational psychology. Her description of client needs aligned precisely with the capabilities I had developed through combining my financial analysis background with the interpersonal effectiveness skills that had emerged from personal boundary-setting experiences. The conversation represented an opportunity to expand my professional impact while working with organizations that faced challenges similar to those I had successfully addressed at Meridian. Strategic Solutions Institute offered a senior consulting position that would involve leading complex organizational transformation projects for clients including technology companies, financial services firms, and healthcare systems that required systematic cultural change alongside strategic restructuring. The role provided significantly increased compensation, equity participation in consulting engagements, and professional development opportunities that would establish my expertise within the specialized field of integrated organizational consulting. The position also included responsibility for developing training programs and methodologies that could systematize the approaches I had created for addressing organizational communication and coordination challenges. This aspect of the role excited me particularly because it offered opportunities to influence broader industry practices while creating scalable solutions that could benefit multiple organizations facing similar challenges. However, accepting the Strategic Solutions Institute offer would require leaving Morrison & Associates, the firm that had supported my professional development and provided the platform for achieving the recognition that made this opportunity possible. The decision involved complex considerations about loyalty, career advancement, and professional impact that required careful evaluation of long-term objectives and values. James Morrison's response to my discussion of the Strategic Solutions Institute opportunity demonstrated the type of mature leadership that had characterized our working relationship throughout my tenure with the firm. Rather than attempting to discourage my consideration of external opportunities, he focused on understanding my professional development objectives and exploring ways that Morrison & Associates might provide similar growth possibilities. Elena, your success at Meridian has created new capabilities for our firm that we should develop systematically rather than treating as isolated project achievements, James said during our conversation about career advancement options. We have been discussing the possibility of establishing an organizational consulting division that would formalize the integrated approach you have pioneered. His proposal involved creating a new practice area within Morrison & Associates that would focus specifically on comprehensive organizational transformation projects, combining financial analysis with change management and cultural development services. The division would allow me to pursue the type of work that interested me while building new revenue streams and competitive capabilities for the firm that had supported my professional growth. The internal expansion opportunity at Morrison & Associates offered several advantages, including maintaining established professional relationships, building upon existing client connections, and creating new services that could benefit the firm's long-term strategic development. However, the Strategic Solutions Institute position provided immediate access to larger projects, more diverse client relationships, and established infrastructure for delivering comprehensive organizational consulting services. The decision-making process required applying the same principled analysis and clear communication approaches that had proved effective during family boundary setting and client relationship management situations. I needed to evaluate both opportunities based on alignment with professional values and long-term career development objectives, rather than simply comparing immediate compensation and status considerations. After extensive analysis of both options, I concluded that Strategic Solutions Institute offered the most effective platform for developing my expertise in integrated organizational consulting, while creating the greatest potential for positive impact across multiple client relationships. The established infrastructure and diverse project portfolio would accelerate my professional development in ways that would benefit my long-term capability for meaningful contribution to organizational transformation initiatives. My conversation with James Morrison about declining the internal expansion opportunity demonstrated the mature professional relationship dynamics that had emerged from my enhanced communication effectiveness. Rather than diplomatic avoidance of potential disappointment, I provided clear explanation of my decision criteria while expressing genuine appreciation for the opportunities Morrison & Associates had provided throughout my career development. James, I want to explain my decision process and express sincere gratitude for the professional development opportunities you have provided, I said during our final discussion about the position transition. Morrison & Associates has been instrumental in developing my analytical capabilities and providing the client relationship experiences that made this advancement possible. My transparent communication about decision factors while maintaining appreciation for past support demonstrated the type of respectful directness that had become characteristic of my professional interactions. The approach preserved positive relationships while establishing clear boundaries about career direction and professional priorities. The transition to Strategic Solutions Institute required relocating from Chicago to Boston, where the firm maintained its headquarters and primary client development operations. The geographic change represented significant personal adjustment, while creating opportunities to establish new professional networks and expand my understanding of different regional business environments and organizational cultures. Victoria's reaction to my career advancement and relocation plans reflected the continued positive development in our family relationship that had emerged from our wedding dress boundary setting conversation. Rather than expressing concern about increased distance or changes in family dynamics, she focused on celebrating my professional achievement while sharing her own continued progress in building sustainable event planning business. Elena, this opportunity sounds like exactly the type of meaningful work you have always wanted to pursue, Victoria said during our discussion of the Strategic Solutions Institute position. Your ability to help organizations improve communication and collaboration while achieving strategic objectives seems perfectly aligned with your professional interests and personal values. Her supportive response confirmed that our improved family relationship had created foundation for mutual encouragement and celebration of individual achievements rather than competitive dynamics or resource-based concerns. The positive reaction demonstrated sustained change in family interaction patterns that extended beyond the immediate wedding dress incident to encompass broader relationship development. I wanted to share that my event planning business has continued growing through the systematic approach we discussed during our boundary conversation. Victoria continued. I recently signed contracts for 3 corporate events and 2 wedding coordination projects that represent significant expansion of my client base and professional reputation. Victoria's business success reflected continued application of the realistic planning and professional boundary-setting principles that had emerged from our family communication improvement. Her achievement of sustainable client relationships and expanded business opportunities validated the importance of systematic skill development and principled professional practices. The conversation confirmed that personal boundary setting and honest communication had created positive development for both family relationships and individual professional advancement. The principles that had initially addressed the wedding dress conflict had generated broader improvements in career development and personal satisfaction for both Victoria and me. My first week at Strategic Solutions Institute involved intensive orientation sessions that introduced me to the firm's methodology for comprehensive organizational consulting, while providing opportunities to meet colleagues who possess diverse expertise in change management, organizational psychology, and strategic implementation. The professional environment represented significant advancement in terms of project complexity and client relationship sophistication. Dr. Foster assigned me to collaborate with senior consultant Michael Thompson on a comprehensive transformation project for Global Tech Solutions, a multinational software company that required integration of recently acquired subsidiaries while maintaining operational effectiveness across different geographic markets and organizational cultures. The project scope exceeded anything I had previously encountered in terms of complexity and strategic importance. Global Tech's challenges involved coordinating development activities across 5 different countries, while integrating 3 recently acquired companies that possessed different technological capabilities and organizational cultures. The acquisition strategy had been financially sound, but implementation had created communication barriers and resource allocation conflicts that prevented effective collaboration between different organizational units. My role involved analyzing the communication and coordination challenges that prevented effective integration while developing systematic approaches for establishing collaborative relationships between units that had previously operated as independent organizations. The assignment required applying the organizational psychology and change management principles I had developed at Meridian to significantly larger and more complex international business environment. The initial assessment phase revealed that Global Tech's integration challenges reflected cultural and communication patterns similar to those I had encountered in previous consulting engagements, though magnified by international scope and linguistic diversity. Different subsidiaries had developed protective approaches to resource allocation and strategic planning that prevented the type of collaborative coordination that successful integration required. The German subsidiary emphasized engineering excellence and systematic process development that reflected cultural values about quality and precision. The Indian subsidiary prioritized cost efficiency and rapid development cycles that reflected market pressures and competitive positioning within the regional technology sector. The American subsidiary focused on innovation and market responsiveness that reflected entrepreneurial business culture and customer relationship priorities. Each subsidiary possessed legitimate expertise and strategic capabilities that could contribute significantly to Global Tech's integrated success. However, the absence of systematic communication protocols and cultural understanding had created competitive rather than collaborative relationships between units that should have been functioning as coordinated components of comprehensive organizational strategy. My recommendations focused on establishing regular cross-cultural communication forums that would allow different subsidiaries to understand each other's operational priorities and cultural contexts while developing integrated project management approaches that leveraged the unique capabilities of each organizational unit. The strategy required addressing both technical coordination requirements and cultural sensitivity considerations that affected international business relationship development. The implementation process proved more complex than previous domestic organizational consulting projects because it required navigating cultural differences and time zone challenges that affected communication effectiveness. However, the fundamental principles of systematic dialogue and collaborative problem-solving remained applicable to international organizational integration challenges. Within 3 months of beginning the Global Tech engagement, the integrated communication and coordination protocols had produced measurable improvements in cross-subsidiary collaboration and project delivery effectiveness. The success attracted attention from other multinational corporations that faced similar integration challenges while establishing my reputation within the specialized field of international organizational consulting. The professional recognition generated speaking invitations from international business conferences and inquiries from executive search firms representing global consulting organizations that required expertise in cross-cultural change management and organizational integration. The career advancement opportunities reflected the cumulative impact of principled leadership and systematic professional development that had begun with family boundary-setting experiences and evolved into specialized expertise with broad industry application. The transformation from the wedding dress confrontation with Victoria to international recognition as an organizational consulting expert demonstrated how personal growth and principled relationship management could create professional opportunities that exceeded initial expectations while generating positive impact for multiple stakeholders across diverse organizational contexts. 8 months into my tenure at Strategic Solutions Institute, the success of the Global Tech Integration Project had established my reputation as a leading expert in cross-cultural organizational transformation, generating demand for my services that extended far beyond individual client engagements to encompass industry-wide influence through methodology development and thought leadership initiatives. The recognition created opportunities to shape best practices across the international consulting community, while developing systematic approaches that could transform how organizations addressed complex integration challenges. Dr. Foster approached me with a proposal that would fundamentally expand my professional impact through establishing a new research division within Strategic Solutions Institute, focused on developing proprietary methodologies for international organizational integration. The initiative would involve creating systematic frameworks that other consulting firms could license, while positioning Strategic Solutions Institute as the premier authority on cross-cultural change management and organizational psychology applications in global business environments. The research division opportunity represented the natural evolution of my career trajectory, from individual consultant to methodology innovator, who could influence industry practices through systematic knowledge development and intellectual property creation. The role would involve conducting comprehensive research on organizational integration patterns while developing training programs and certification processes that would disseminate effective approaches throughout the international consulting community. Elena, your work has demonstrated that effective organizational integration requires systematic approaches that can be taught and replicated rather than relying on individual consultant intuition and experience. Dr. Foster explained during our discussion of the research division proposal. We believe you can create standardized methodologies that will transform how the industry addresses complex organizational transformation challenges. The opportunity aligned perfectly with my professional values about creating scalable solutions that could benefit multiple organizations while advancing the theoretical understanding of organizational psychology and change management principles. The research division would provide platform for influencing thousands of organizations through systematic methodology development, rather than limiting impact to individual client relationships. However, establishing the research division would require significant investment of time and resources in activities that differed substantially from direct client consulting work. The role would involve academic research, methodology documentation, training program development, and intellectual property management that required different skills from those I had developed through client relationship management and project implementation. The decision to accept the research division leadership role required careful consideration of long-term career objectives and personal satisfaction factors that extended beyond immediate compensation and status considerations. The position offered opportunities for broad industry influence while potentially reducing direct client interaction and hands-on organizational transformation work that had provided significant professional fulfillment. After extensive analysis of the strategic implications and alignment with personal values, I accepted the research division leadership position based on recognition that methodology development offered the most effective approach for creating sustainable positive impact across multiple organizational contexts. The ability to influence industry practices through systematic knowledge creation represented the optimal utilization of expertise I had developed through diverse client experiences and cultural integration projects. The first major initiative for the new research division involved conducting comprehensive analysis of organizational integration patterns across different cultural contexts to identify universal principles that could be applied effectively, regardless of specific national or regional business environments. The project required collaboration with consulting firms in 12 different countries to gather data about successful and unsuccessful integration attempts across diverse industries and organizational structures. The international research collaboration provided opportunities to work with leading experts in organizational psychology and change management from European, Asian, and Latin American consulting firms, who possessed complementary expertise and cultural perspectives that enhanced the comprehensiveness of methodology development efforts. The collaborative approach reflected my commitment to inclusive research practices that acknowledge diverse cultural contributions to organizational effectiveness principles. Dr. Maria Santos from the Barcelona Institute of Business Strategy contributed extensive research on Mediterranean organizational cultures and family business integration challenges that provided insights into relationship-based business environments. Professor Hiroshi Tanaka from Tokyo Management Consultants shared analysis of consensus-building processes and hierarchical communication patterns that characterized Japanese organizational integration approaches. The international research team also included Dr. Priya Sharma from Mumbai Strategic Advisors, who brought expertise in rapid scaling and cost-effective resource allocation strategies that reflected Indian technology sector practices. Dr. Carlos Rodriguez from Sao Paulo Business Solutions contributed understanding of flexible organizational structures and adaptive management approaches that had proved effective in dynamic South American business environments. The diversity of cultural perspectives and methodological approaches within the research collaboration enriched the development of universal principles while ensuring that recommended practices remained sensitive to regional variations in business culture and organizational expectations. The inclusive research process reflected my commitment to developing solutions that respected cultural differences while establishing effective communication and coordination frameworks. The methodology development process involved analyzing over 200 organizational integration projects across different industries and cultural contexts to identify patterns that distinguished successful transformations from unsuccessful attempts. The comprehensive dataset provided unprecedented insight into factors that consistently contributed to positive outcomes, regardless of specific organizational characteristics or cultural environments. The analysis revealed that successful organizational integration consistently involved three fundamental principles that transcended cultural and industry variations. First, successful projects established systematic communication protocols that provided regular opportunities for different organizational units to share expertise and coordinate activities without competitive positioning or resource protection behaviors. Second, effective integration required explicit acknowledgement of legitimate interests and capabilities possessed by all organizational units involved in the transformation process. Rather than treating integration as absorption of weaker organizations by dominant entities, successful approaches recognized that each unit possessed valuable expertise that could contribute to enhanced collective capabilities. Third, sustainable integration demanded ongoing attention to relationship development and cultural sensitivity, rather than treating integration as a technical process that could be completed through structural reorganization and policy implementation alone. The most successful projects invested consistently in building understanding and trust between organizational units throughout the integration timeline. These three universal principles provided foundation for developing systematic methodology that could be adapted to diverse organizational contexts while maintaining effectiveness across different cultural environments and industry requirements. The research findings demonstrated that organizational integration success depended more on consistent application of communication and relationship development principles than on specific technical approaches or structural arrangements. The methodology development culminated in creation of the Integrated Transformation Framework, a comprehensive approach to organizational integration that provided step-by-step guidance for establishing effective communication protocols, acknowledging diverse capabilities, and building sustainable relationships between organizational units. The framework included assessment tools, training materials, and implementation guidelines that could be customized for different industries and cultural contexts. Strategic Solutions Institute began piloting the Integrated Transformation Framework with select clients to validate effectiveness and refine implementation procedures before broader industry introduction. The pilot projects included a European pharmaceutical company integrating American research subsidiaries, a Japanese manufacturing firm acquiring Brazilian production facilities, and an Australian financial services company merging with Canadian investment management operations. Each pilot project provided opportunities to test framework effectiveness while gathering feedback that informed refinement of assessment tools and training materials. The diverse cultural and industry contexts ensured that methodology recommendations remained applicable across different organizational environments while maintaining consistent effectiveness in achieving integration objectives. The pilot project results exceeded initial projections for integration timeline reduction and stakeholder satisfaction improvement. Organizations using the Integrated Transformation Framework completed integration processes 37% faster than industry averages, while achieving significantly higher employee engagement scores and customer satisfaction ratings during transition periods. The success of pilot implementations attracted attention from major international consulting firms that expressed interest in licensing the Integrated Transformation Framework for their own client engagements. The licensing inquiries represented validation of methodology effectiveness, while creating revenue opportunities that could support continued research and development activities within Strategic Solutions Institute. McKinsey Global Institute approached Strategic Solutions Institute with a proposal for exclusive licensing arrangement that would provide their consultants with comprehensive training in integrated transformation framework applications, while establishing Strategic Solutions Institute as preferred partner for complex international integration projects that required specialized cultural sensitivity and relationship development expertise. The McKinsey partnership proposal offered significant revenue generation and market expansion opportunities, while providing platform for broader industry influence through association with globally recognized consulting brand. However, exclusive licensing arrangements would limit access to methodology benefits for smaller consulting firms and organizations that could benefit from framework applications but lacked resources for premium consulting services. My recommendation to Dr. Foster emphasized the importance of maintaining broad accessibility to integrated transformation framework benefits through multiple licensing arrangements, rather than exclusive partnerships that could limit positive impact to organizations with substantial consulting budgets. The decision reflected my commitment to maximizing beneficial outcomes for diverse organizational contexts, rather than optimizing revenue generation through exclusivity restrictions. Strategic Solutions Institute ultimately implemented tiered licensing structure that provided McKinsey with preferred partner status, while maintaining availability of framework training and materials for smaller consulting firms and internal organizational development teams. The approach balanced revenue optimization with broad accessibility objectives, while establishing Strategic Solutions Institute as industry leader in integrated organizational transformation methodology. The framework launch generated speaking invitations from Harvard Business School, Wharton School of Business, and London Business School for presentations about cultural sensitivity applications in international organizational integration. The academic recognition provided opportunities to influence management education curriculum while establishing theoretical foundations for practical methodology applications. Victoria contacted me during this period to share significant developments in her event planning business that reflected continued application of systematic professional development approaches we had discussed during our boundary-setting conversation. Her business growth demonstrated parallel commitment to principled practices and strategic relationship building that had characterized her professional evolution since our wedding dress confrontation. Elena, I wanted to update you on a major opportunity that has emerged through the professional network I have been building systematically, Victoria explained during our conversation. The Chicago Convention and Tourism Bureau has invited me to coordinate their annual industry showcase event, which will involve managing relationships with over 50 vendors and 300 attendees. The opportunity represented significant professional recognition that reflected Victoria's sustained commitment to skill development and reputation building through consistent delivery of quality services. The Convention and Tourism Bureau invitation demonstrated that her systematic approach to business development had created credibility within the professional event planning community. The project will require coordinating with municipal government officials, hotel management teams, catering services, entertainment providers, and transportation logistics, while managing complex scheduling requirements and budget considerations. Victoria continued. The scope exceeds anything I have handled previously, but I believe the systematic planning and communication approaches I have developed will enable successful execution. Her confident assessment of project requirements combined with realistic acknowledgement of increased complexity demonstrated mature professional judgment that had emerged through practical experience and systematic skill development. The willingness to accept challenging opportunities while maintaining clear understanding of preparation requirements reflected exactly the type of strategic career advancement that principled professional practices could support. The conversation confirmed that boundary setting and systematic professional development principles had continued generating positive outcomes for both family relationships and individual career advancement across different professional contexts. The transformation that had begun with the wedding dress confrontation had created foundation for sustained growth and meaningful contribution within our respective fields of expertise. The success of the Integrated Transformation Framework launch and the expansion of my influence within the international consulting community demonstrated how principled leadership and systematic methodology development could create platforms for broad, positive impact while advancing individual career development objectives. The research division had achieved its objective of transforming industry practices through evidence-based framework development and comprehensive training program implementation. The first significant challenge to the Integrated Transformation Framework emerged 18 months after its initial launch, when Apex Industries, a multinational manufacturing conglomerate, engaged Strategic Solutions Institute for the most complex organizational integration project in our firm's history. The engagement involved coordinating the merger of 7 different companies across 4 continents, while maintaining operational effectiveness throughout a 12-month integration timeline that would determine the success or failure of a $47 billion acquisition strategy. Apex Industries had acquired these companies over an 18-month period as part of an aggressive expansion strategy designed to establish market dominance in specialized manufacturing sectors, including aerospace components, medical device production, and renewable energy infrastructure. However, the rapid acquisition pace had created unprecedented integration challenges that required simultaneous coordination of different languages, regulatory environments, technological platforms, and organizational cultures. The project complexity exceeded anything the Integrated Transformation Framework had previously addressed, requiring adaptation of established methodologies to accommodate multiple concurrent integration processes, while maintaining consistency in communication protocols and relationship development approaches. The engagement would serve as definitive validation of framework effectiveness under extreme organizational complexity and cultural diversity conditions. Dr. Foster assigned me to lead a 15-person consulting team that included specialists in regulatory compliance, technology integration, financial restructuring, and human resources management. The multidisciplinary approach reflected recognition that successful completion would require coordination of expertise areas that extended far beyond traditional organizational psychology and change management considerations. The initial assessment phase revealed that Apex Industries faced integration challenges in 3 distinct categories that required simultaneous attention throughout the transformation process. First, technical integration required harmonizing 7 different manufacturing systems, quality control processes, and supply chain networks into coordinated operations that could deliver consistent product quality and delivery performance across all geographic markets. Second, regulatory compliance integration demanded establishing consistent adherence to different national and international standards for product safety, environmental protection, and labor practices, while maintaining operational efficiency across diverse regulatory environments. The complexity was amplified by variations in legal requirements between countries and industries that affected manufacturing processes and business practices. Third, cultural integration required building collaborative relationships between organizational units that possess different approaches to hierarchy, communication, decision-making, and conflict resolution. The cultural diversity included European consensus-building traditions, American entrepreneurial independence, Asian hierarchical respect systems, and Latin American relationship-focused business practices. Each integration category presented legitimate technical challenges that could prevent successful merger completion, if not addressed systematically. However, the interdependencies between technical, regulatory, and cultural factors created complexity levels that exceeded the sum of individual challenges by requiring simultaneous coordination across multiple organizational dimensions. The Integrated Transformation Framework provided foundational principles for addressing each integration category through systematic communication protocols, capability acknowledgement, and relationship development. However, the framework required significant adaptation to accommodate the scale and complexity of concurrent integration processes that characterized the Apex Industries engagement. My strategy involved establishing regional integration teams for each geographic area that would focus on local technical and cultural considerations, while maintaining coordination with central planning team responsible for overall strategic direction and cross-regional consistency. The approach balanced local expertise and cultural sensitivity with systematic methodology application and global integration objectives. The European integration team, led by Dr. Santos from our Barcelona research collaboration, focused on harmonizing German precision manufacturing with Italian design innovation and British quality assurance systems. The cultural integration challenges involved reconciling different approaches to workflow optimization and quality control that reflected distinct national business traditions and regulatory requirements. The Asian integration team, coordinated by Professor Tanaka from our Tokyo Research Partnership, addressed coordination between Japanese systematic process development, Chinese cost efficiency optimization, and South Korean technological innovation capabilities. The cultural complexity involved establishing communication protocols that respected hierarchical traditions, while enabling collaborative decision-making across different organizational levels. The American integration team concentrated on coordinating United States entrepreneurial innovation with Canadian systematic planning and Mexican flexible manufacturing approaches. The cultural integration required balancing individual initiative recognition with collective coordination requirements while maintaining operational efficiency across different business relationship styles. Each regional integration team implemented the integrated transformation framework through culturally appropriate communication structures while maintaining consistency with overall methodology principles and strategic objectives. The approach required continuous coordination between regional teams to ensure that local adaptations remained compatible with global integration requirements. The first major challenge emerged during the third month of implementation when the European and Asian integration teams developed different interpretations of quality control standards that reflected legitimate cultural differences in risk assessment and process verification approaches. The disagreement threatened to create inconsistent product quality standards that could affect customer satisfaction and regulatory compliance across different markets. The German team emphasized systematic documentation and comprehensive testing protocols that ensured consistent quality through rigorous process controls and detailed performance verification. Their approach reflected cultural values about precision and reliability that had established German manufacturing excellence reputation within global markets. The Japanese team prioritized continuous improvement and adaptability through iterative refinement processes that emphasized flexibility and responsiveness to changing customer requirements. Their approach reflected cultural commitment to excellence through ongoing enhancement rather than static adherence to predetermined specifications. Both approaches possessed legitimate advantages and reflected sophisticated understanding of quality management principles. However, the absence of coordinated standards threatened to create operational inconsistencies that could prevent effective integration and compromise customer confidence in Apex Industries' products across different geographic markets. My resolution strategy involved facilitating comprehensive dialogue between regional teams to identify shared quality objectives while developing integrated standards that incorporated strengths from different cultural approaches. The process required applying advanced conflict resolution techniques that acknowledged legitimate cultural differences while establishing collaborative frameworks for unified standard development. The breakthrough occurred during a week-long joint planning session in Geneva, where representatives from all regional integration teams worked together to develop comprehensive quality standards that balanced systematic documentation requirements with continuous improvement flexibility. The collaborative process demonstrated that apparent conflicts between different cultural approaches could be resolved through careful integration that preserved essential elements from each perspective. The integrated quality standards incorporated German systematic documentation practices with Japanese continuous improvement protocols, while establishing clear performance metrics that satisfied regulatory requirements across all operational environments. The solution preserved cultural authenticity while ensuring consistent product quality and customer satisfaction across different geographic markets. The success of the quality standards integration process validated the integrated transformation framework's effectiveness under complex multicultural conditions, while demonstrating that systematic methodology application could resolve apparent conflicts between legitimate but different cultural approaches to business excellence. The experience provided confidence for addressing subsequent integration challenges with increased sophistication and cultural sensitivity. The second major challenge involved coordinating technology platform integration across 7 different manufacturing systems that had been developed independently over several decades. Each system possessed unique capabilities and operational advantages that contributed to acquisition attractiveness. But the diversity prevented effective coordination and resource sharing that global integration required. The technology integration required establishing common communication protocols and data sharing systems, while preserving specialized capabilities that provided competitive advantages within specific product categories and market segments. The challenge involved balancing standardization benefits with flexibility requirements that supported continued innovation and market responsiveness. The solution involved developing hybrid technology architecture that established common integration layers, while maintaining specialized subsystems for unique operational requirements. The approach allowed coordinated planning and resource sharing, while preserving technological capabilities that differentiated Apex Industries' products within competitive markets. The technology integration process required 6 months of intensive coordination between regional teams and specialized technical consultants. However, the systematic communication protocols established through the Integrated Transformation Framework enabled effective collaboration despite the technical complexity and geographic distribution of development activities. The third significant challenge emerged during the cultural integration phase when different regional teams expressed conflicting priorities about resource allocation and strategic emphasis that reflected legitimate but incompatible perspectives about market development and operational optimization. The disagreements threatened to create competitive internal dynamics that could prevent collaborative strategic implementation. The resolution required extensive application of relationship development and cultural sensitivity principles that constituted core elements of the Integrated Transformation Framework. The process involved facilitating understanding of different cultural perspectives, while developing strategic approaches that acknowledged legitimate interests from all regional operations. The cultural integration ultimately succeeded through establishment of rotating leadership structures that provided each regional team with opportunities to guide specific strategic initiatives while maintaining collaborative coordination for overall organizational objectives. The approach balanced cultural autonomy with unified strategic direction, while ensuring that all regional perspectives received appropriate consideration within decision-making processes. By the completion of the 12-month integration timeline, Apex Industries had achieved successful coordination of all 7 acquisitions, while maintaining operational effectiveness and customer satisfaction levels that exceeded industry benchmarks for complex merger implementations. The success validated the Integrated Transformation Framework's effectiveness under extreme complexity conditions, while establishing Strategic Solutions Institute's reputation for handling unprecedented organizational transformation challenges. The Apex Industries' success generated immediate recognition within the international consulting community and attracted inquiries from other multinational corporations facing complex integration challenges. The project established definitive proof that systematic methodology application could achieve successful outcomes even under the most demanding organizational transformation conditions. Victoria contacted me during this period to share that her successful coordination of the Chicago Convention and Tourism Bureau Showcase had generated opportunities for expanding her business into corporate consulting and strategic event management for major organizations. Her professional development reflected continued application of systematic approaches and principled relationship building that had characterized her growth since our boundary-setting conversation. The parallel success stories demonstrated that principled approaches to professional development and systematic skill building could generate significant achievements across different industries and career paths. The transformation that had begun with our wedding dress confrontation had created foundation for sustained excellence and meaningful contribution within our respective professional domains. The extraordinary success of the Apex Industries integration project created unprecedented recognition for the Integrated Transformation Framework within the international business community, generating inquiries from organizations that operated far beyond traditional corporate consulting parameters. Universities, government agencies, healthcare systems, and nonprofit organizations expressed interest in adapting systematic integration methodologies to address their unique institutional challenges and stakeholder coordination requirements. Dr. Foster approached me with a strategic proposal that would fundamentally expand Strategic Solutions Institute's market positioning through developing specialized versions of the Integrated Transformation Framework for public sector organizations, educational institutions, and social impact enterprises. The initiative represented significant departure from our established focus on corporate clients, while creating opportunities to apply proven methodologies to organizations that served broader societal purposes. Elena, your framework has demonstrated effectiveness across diverse cultural contexts and organizational structures. Dr. Foster explained during our strategic planning discussion. We believe these principles could transform how public institutions and social organizations approach complex coordination challenges that affect millions of people worldwide. The proposal aligned with personal values about creating positive social impact while representing natural evolution of my professional expertise toward applications that could benefit communities beyond corporate stakeholder groups. However, adapting established methodologies for public sector environments would require significant research and development investment, while potentially diluting focus on corporate consulting revenue that supported current operational requirements. The strategic decision required careful analysis of market opportunities, resource allocation implications, and long-term positioning considerations that would affect Strategic Solutions Institute's competitive positioning within the consulting industry. The expansion into public sector markets could either strengthen our distinctive capabilities or create operational complexity that reduced effectiveness within established corporate consulting relationships. After extensive analysis of market research data and internal capability assessments, I recommended pursuing selective public sector engagements that would allow methodology testing and refinement without compromising established corporate client relationships. The strategic approach would enable gradual market expansion while maintaining revenue stability and operational focus that supported continued framework development. The first public sector opportunity emerged through the United Nations Development Program, which sought consulting support for coordinating humanitarian aid distribution across multiple international organizations in regions affected by natural disasters and political instability. The engagement required adapting the Integrated Transformation Framework to address coordination challenges between organizations that possessed different mandates, funding sources, and operational cultures. The Humanitarian Coordination Project presented unique challenges that differed significantly from corporate integration contexts, while requiring similar systematic approaches to communication protocol establishment and stakeholder relationship development. The organizations involved included government agencies, military units, non-governmental organizations, and international relief agencies that operated according to different decision-making processes and accountability structures. The complexity was amplified by time pressure considerations and resource limitations that characterized emergency response environments. Unlike corporate integration projects that could be planned systematically over extended timelines, humanitarian coordination required rapid implementation under crisis conditions while maintaining effectiveness across diverse organizational cultures and operational constraints. My strategy involved establishing emergency coordination protocols that incorporated core framework principles while accommodating the urgency and resource limitations that characterize disaster response environments. The approach required significant adaptation of established methodology components while preserving essential communication and relationship development elements that enabled effective multi-organizational coordination. The implementation process demonstrated that integrated transformation framework principles remained effective under emergency conditions when adapted appropriately for rapid deployment and resource-constrained operations. The Humanitarian Coordination Project achieved measurable improvements in aid distribution efficiency and organizational collaboration, while validating framework applicability beyond corporate consulting contexts. The success of the humanitarian project attracted attention from other public sector organizations including the World Health Organization, UNESCO, and various national development agencies that faced similar multi-organizational coordination challenges. The inquiries confirmed market demand for systematic approaches to institutional coordination, while establishing Strategic Solutions Institute's credibility within international development and public service sectors. Simultaneously, the corporate consulting division continued expanding through strategic partnerships with major consulting firms that licensed specialized versions of the Integrated Transformation Framework for their client engagements. McKinsey Global Institute reported exceptional client satisfaction scores and project success rates for engagements that employed framework methodologies, leading to expanded licensing agreements and collaborative development of industry-specific adaptations. The dual-market approach created operational complexity that required careful resource allocation and quality control coordination across different consulting contexts. However, the diversified revenue streams provided financial stability that supported continued research and development activities while reducing dependence on individual client relationships or market sector performance. The strategic expansion also created opportunities for developing specialized expertise within different consulting team members who focused on particular market sectors or application contexts. The specialization enabled more sophisticated service delivery while maintaining consistency with core framework principles that distinguished Strategic Solutions Institute's approach from conventional consulting methodologies. During this expansion period, I received an unexpected invitation from Harvard Business School to deliver the keynote address at their annual International Management Conference, where over 800 executives, academic researchers, and consulting professionals would gather to discuss emerging trends in organizational transformation and global business coordination. The speaking opportunity represented significant recognition within the academic and professional communities, while providing platform for influencing management education and consulting industry practices through thought leadership and methodology dissemination. The keynote address would establish my reputation as leading authority on systematic organizational integration, while creating visibility for Strategic Solutions Institute's innovative approaches. The keynote preparation required developing comprehensive presentation that would communicate complex methodology principles to diverse audience, while demonstrating practical applications across different organizational contexts and cultural environments. The presentation needed to balance academic rigor with practical utility, while inspiring audience members to consider implementation of systematic integration approaches within their own professional responsibilities. My presentation, titled Beyond Cultural Barriers: Systematic Approaches to Global Organizational Integration, focused on three fundamental principles that had emerged from extensive research and practical application across diverse consulting engagements. The presentation demonstrated how systematic communication protocols, capability acknowledgement, and relationship development could transform organizational effectiveness regardless of cultural context or industry sector. The audience response exceeded expectations, generating standing ovation and extensive discussion that continued through multiple networking sessions following the keynote presentation. Academic researchers expressed interest in collaborative studies that would further validate framework effectiveness, while consulting professionals requested training opportunities and licensing arrangements that would enable implementation within their own client relationships. The Harvard presentation generated immediate invitations from Wharton School of Business, Stanford Graduate School of Business, and London Business School for similar keynote presentations and guest lecturing opportunities. The academic recognition provided platform for influencing management education curriculum while establishing theoretical foundations for practical methodology applications. Victoria contacted me during this period with remarkable news about her business expansion into strategic consulting for major corporate events and institutional celebrations that required sophisticated project management and stakeholder coordination capabilities. Her professional development had evolved from basic event coordination to comprehensive strategic planning that addressed complex organizational and cultural considerations. Elena, I wanted to share that the systematic approaches we discussed during our boundary conversation have enabled me to pursue opportunities that seemed impossible when I was focused on unrealistic expectations rather than skill development, Victoria explained during our conversation. The Chicago Tourism Bureau project led to consulting contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies that require exactly the type of communication and coordination capabilities I have been developing systematically. Her business expansion included strategic planning for corporate annual meetings, international conference coordination, and merger celebration events that required managing complex stakeholder relationships across different organizational cultures. The scope of her current projects demonstrated sophisticated professional capabilities that reflected sustained commitment to systematic skill development and realistic strategic planning. The most significant project involves coordinating the Global Leadership Summit for an international technology company that will bring together executives from 23 countries for strategic planning sessions and cultural exchange activities. Victoria continued. The complexity requires exactly the type of cultural sensitivity and systematic coordination that I learned to appreciate through our family boundary discussions. The parallel between Victoria's corporate event coordination challenges and my organizational integration consulting demonstrated how principled approaches to relationship management and systematic skill development could create professional opportunities across different industries and application contexts. The transformation that had begun with our wedding dress confrontation had generated sustained growth and meaningful contribution within both of our professional domains. The conversation confirmed that boundary setting and systematic professional development principles had continued generating positive outcomes for family relationships and individual career advancement across increasingly complex and sophisticated professional responsibilities. The evolution of both our careers reflected sustained commitment to principled practices and strategic relationship building that had emerged from honest communication and mutual respect establishment. The strategic expansion of Strategic Solutions Institute through dual market positioning had created platform for broad social impact, while maintaining financial stability and operational effectiveness that supported continued methodology development and industry leadership. The adaptation of proven corporate consulting approaches to public sector applications demonstrated versatility and scalability of systematic integration frameworks, while expanding opportunities for positive societal contribution. The success of strategic pivots and adaptations validated the importance of maintaining core principles while remaining flexible about application contexts and implementation approaches. The ability to preserve essential framework elements while adapting methodology components for different organizational environments had enabled expansion into new markets without compromising effectiveness or institutional reputation. The Harvard keynote presentation and subsequent academic recognition had established thought leadership platform that would influence management education and consulting industry practices for years to come. The combination of practical success with theoretical contribution provided foundation for continued professional development and expanded influence within multiple professional communities. The transformation from wedding dress boundary enforcement to international thought leadership demonstrated how personal growth through principled relationship management could create professional opportunities that exceeded initial expectations, while generating positive impact for diverse stakeholder groups across multiple organizational contexts and cultural environments. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.